morning, Tri-Cities. It's 9 o'clock on Friday, and it's time for Coffee with Karl. I'm Karl Dye from TriDeck. And today it is our pleasure to welcome the leadership team from the Arts Center Task Force. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
First of all, I need to thank Mike from Moon Security. Moon Security is our sponsor. This first part of Coffee with Karl, and Mike and his crew do a great job. They have great customer service. If you're concerned about security for your home or business, make sure that you give Mike and his team at Moon Security a call. So let's go around and I'll introduce everybody. Finney Brown, you're the Executive Director of the Arts Center Task Force. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. We're looking forward to a great conversation. Stephen Wiley is the chair of the board for the task force. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, and thank you very much for inviting us to talk about this wonderful project.
You're welcome. I'm personally looking forward to learning about what you guys are working on and what the opportunities are for our community. Last but not least, we have Julie Wiley, who's the fundraising committee chair. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning. Thanks again for having us.
Oh, you bet. So as always, we'll kick off with a coffee cup story. And today I actually forgot to look for a coffee cup before I came in the office, but I just have a Coffee with Karl mug. And I figured that was appropriate because I think that this discussion that we're going to have, obviously at TriDeck, we do economic development, but the economic development that we do is really for our community. And, the arts and what the Arts Center Task Force is working on doing for our community is huge, to showcase the arts, to have this facility that you can bring in performances as well as local groups, have a center where everybody in the community knows that this is where you go for these wonderful performances is huge for our community. So when we're working on bringing companies in, helping companies grow, what the Arts Center Task Force is doing now and can do in the future is a huge benefit to our community and the quality of life. So, that's really what TriDeck's about. That's really what we want to talk about our community on Coffee with Karl. So that's my mug and my story. Finney, what do you have for us this morning?
Oh, it's a little bit of an inside joke here. If you know anything about commodity foods that are used to be, I don't know if they still are, given out to native tribal members, it's like a food thing. They all look like this, or they like all the cans and things have this general design. But this is just sort of a little funny mug by a Yakima Nation artist. Native Anthro is their website, but they have all these little ones that mimic the cans. This is Res Roast, and it's got all these just kind of silly things.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Stephen, how about you? What mug or story do you have for us this morning?
Well, I have, let's see if you can see this. This is a mug that I got about 25 years ago from a biotech company called Entelos. They were located in California, and their mission was to develop computer simulations of diseases so that you could predict how patients would respond to drugs. And at the turn of the century, they were rated one of the top 5 most exciting places in the country to work for. And then about 10 years later, they went bankrupt. Not because it wasn't a great idea, but because they were too soon. Okay, so in a sense, it wasn't ready. There wasn't the technology wasn't there. Computers weren't powerful enough. Their ideas were wonderful, but they, instead of being persistent and working on it slowly, they decided to head for the fences, and they're no longer around. And so it's sort of like Arts Center Task Force was found around the same time, and we're still around. And we're thinking that maybe the 90s and the early turn of the century wasn't quite the right time for us. So we've sort of learned what these other companies do, and we sort of said, well, we're going to persist and we're going to wait for the right time. And that's what we think right now is the right time to build the Performing Arts Center.
That's so well said. And we had this pre before we came on at 9 conversation about timing. I totally agree with you. The timing is so much of it. And I'm sure that company, during COVID would have, they would have had a ready market to some degree, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. Julie, how about you? Do you have a mug or coffee story you want to share with us this morning?
Well, this is a mug from the Oregon Shakespearean Festival down
Oh,
in
cool.
Ashland. And this is a 2003, shows their season. And I got this when my son was at Hanford High in drama, and I chaperoned the drama class on a trip down there. And it's just such a good reminder of what an important part that art has played in our lives and in his life, and in all of those kids who are so enthusiastic about seeing Shakespeare and other shows. I love this, and I haven't broken it yet.
Which is rare.
That's right. That's cool. I've heard about the Shakespeare Festival in Ashland. I've never been. A long, long time ago, I went to one. There's one in Boise that they have down by the river every year, and I went a long time ago. But those outdoor Shakespeare festivals are really cool. I'm sure they do an amazing job in Ashland.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's start back with Finney again. Finney, tell us about you and your background and your role in the Arts Center Task Force to kick us off.
Sure, yeah. I'm originally from Hermiston, so not very far from here, just over the river, but I moved to the big city, Tri-Cities, to go to school at CBC, and then I just never left. But my background is, so my degree is in marketing, but I've kind of found myself working in the wine industry for quite a while. And I worked for the Walter Clore Center, which was a nonprofit wine museum and tasting room, and did a bunch of fun culinary stuff. And I did their event management and marketing. And then I went back into the wine industry. Then the pandemic happened, and then I found Arts Center Task Force. I worked for the Reed Mechanicals actually as their executive director for a while. And then when Arts Center Task Force was hiring an executive director, I really wanted to be a part of this project. And so I applied, and here we are about 2 years later.
Oh, that's awesome. I did want to ask, because I read your bio, and then with your mug, with the commodity food mug, and I think in your bio it said that you're a lineal descendant of the Coeur d'Alene tribe. So I went to high school in Plummer, and so I went to classmates and old friends that are
small world
Coeur d'Alene tribal members. Yeah, but just out of curiosity, what's the last name of your family that are Coeur d'Alene tribal members?
Yeah, so Fanning is probably
okay.
You might recognize that last name. I don't know how old you are, but you might have gone to school with my dad or any one of his, I think 6 brothers.
Okay. Yeah. No, I do recognize that name, and I know I appreciate it a lot. We are here at TriDec, and as a community, we've been working with the Umatilla tribe, CTYR, for a couple of years, and then we're just starting to engage with Yakima Nation on some shoreline reconveyance work with the Corps of Engineers that we've been working on for a long time. So it's really, I guess, for me, because I went to high school in Plummer, that tribal connection is really good, and it's awesome to learn about our local tribes and for both of those tribes, especially, as well as others. They had such a presence in the Tri-Cities, and so that's. It's something that it's very interesting for me to learn, and for all of us to share, with our community, to just know who was here before the rest of us were here, and what are ways that we can celebrate that today. That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Stephen, how about you? What's your story? How did you get to the Arts Center Task Force, and what's your day job, I guess?
I'm actually a lab fellow out at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. And I came here in 2000 from the University of Utah, where I was a professor in pathology. And I was actually brought in to build a program, user facilities for a user facility for the biological sciences. And we were going great until 9/11 happened, which sort of disrupted everything, and sort of people refocus. But I've always loved building programs. I'm a program manager out of PNNL as well, and so I got involved in Habitat for Humanity, and I was their board president for a while. And then and after that gig, I was thinking I got to do something. Well, I had always been really interested in the performing arts, and my wife Julie has been very big into performing arts. And they said, we need someone who has experience in project management and organizations and building programs to help lead this. And so I was impressed with, first of all, what the need was in the community for something like this, and for the passion of the people. And so I've been working with them since about 2012 to lead this effort. And one of the things we learned at the National Laboratory, you don't basically say, we want to build something, it's built. It takes years, it takes time. You have to cultivate the sponsor. You've got to engage the scientific community. You've got to build it from the ground up, and then it will take place. And so we basically have taken the same tact with the Art Center Task Force. It's something which we needed to build up the capabilities to build and run a performing arts center. And so now, as we talked about timing, this is really a good time, because we've done the infrastructure, and the community infrastructure to make it happen.
That's great. And it makes a lot of sense. Can you give us an example of building the infrastructure? I mean, I would assume, Finney would be an example of that.
Oh yeah, well, that's exactly
having your team, right? Like, yeah.
Well, yeah, in a sense, it takes people. You can't just snap your finger and have it happen. There's, in essence, there are three ways that performing arts centers get built in this country. One is a very rich person says, "Oh, I think I'll build a performing arts center." And they just sign a check and hire people, and it's done. We looked around for one of those people here and couldn't find one. So I was like, that's not too good. So the second way is actually to have a city or a municipality to build it. And typically for that to occur, you need a large city and a municipality. And the problem we're having with this area is that there's not one city, there's 4 cities. And so that has been an issue. And so the third way is to have a community group that build a nonprofit and then create a public-private partnership. And that means you have to build the community infrastructure, the volunteers, the headquarters, all the infrastructure to support the community in their effort. And so that model is appropriate for us and has been successful in building performing arts centers across the state, like in McIntyre Hall is a good example of that. And so what we're trying to do is to take that model and use it to build the performing arts center here. Okay,
that makes sense. Well, it looks like Julie might have dropped out and she's going to rejoin us, but
yeah.
And Finney, would you be the right one to answer the question? Just like, can you give us the overview of what would the Art Center test? Oh, there she is.
There she is. Obviously, her camera's not working very well in the other room.
I see that. Well, since Julie's back, Julie, how about you? What is your backstory and or day job, or how did you get to be fundraising committee chair for the Art Center Task Force?
You're going to have to repeat.
Yep, for sure. So we were just going and kind of giving our backstory, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to be the fundraising committee chair for Art Center Task Force?
Well, I am pretty much a Tri-Cities native. Excuse me, and I've been involved in music and theater since I was in high school. But I went to WSU and got a degree in communications, and then also minors in music and theater. So I didn't mean to come back to the Tri-Cities, but that's what the job was, and that just turned out to be a blessing. But I found myself frustrated, along with other performing arts groups, other performers, about this lack of a performing arts center, which I had heard of for years, this complaint. And so I can remember getting on the phone to one of my friends who I knew had been involved in it a few years ago. And I said, "What is going on?" And he said, "Nothing." And so we were really, really happy when I believe it was symphony music director Nick Wallen suggested to Steve that he said it had been reborn, the group. And he suggested that Steve be part of it and encouraged me as well. And that's where I have now formed the tagline for our organization, is that building a performing arts center is not for the faint of heart. Because you've got to keep plugging. And I never dreamed I was at PNNL for 30 years, and I never dreamed that when I retired that I would be, or even before that, that I would be doing this. Never in my wildest dreams, but I'm loving it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So let's just kind of wrap back around and Vinny, can you describe for us what's the dream? Like, what is the art center? Like, what would it look like? You know, what would be features of it? Who would use it? Can you kind of give us that overview?
Yeah. So we've actually done a lot of homework into this to make sure that our plans are the best facility for our community and for the groups that will use it. We worked with and we're still working with LMN Architects out of Seattle. They're kind of the premier performing arts center architecture firm in the Pacific Northwest. And I think it was a few years ago, they drew up some plans for us and just kind of preliminary drawings that and helped us figure out kind of what size we would want the facility to be and what the features should be. And so ideally, we have an 800-seat state-of-the-art auditorium that has, something we recently added is streaming capabilities and has fly space so that it's easier to bring in outside shows and keep our local shows at the same time and do quick turnaround. And we'd have space for the artists, like, dressing rooms and those facilities, and then a lobby that can be used for events and other things when it's not just acting as a lobby. And then also along with it, there's an art gallery planned and a community space that's really flexible and can be used either for event rentals or small performances, rehearsals. It'll have seating that comes that kind of comes and goes that you can rearrange and as needed. So really, we've worked really hard to make sure that it meets all the needs of our community and that it's professionally designed, and we're going about it in the right way. And Steve can probably expand on that a bit because he was around when they did that design work.
Yeah, I'll just say that when we originally, went out to think about we need a performing arts center, a lot of people said, well, we need a 2,000 seat theater. We need big so that touring shows can come and do all this. And so that was the original plan. And then when we brought in the consultant, and actually several consultants told us this, that no, you do not want a 2,000 seat theater. You do not. They say it will fail miserably because it's too big. And we even went to Eugene, Oregon, who has the Holt Center. And that's a 2,300 seat theater. And the advice they gave us is don't build this, make something smaller, because they're very expensive to run large theaters.
And build,
to say the least. And so what they advised us is, look, for an area this size with the community you have, 90 to 95% of all the shows that you want will be about 800 seats. Okay, that way you will pack it. You'll be able to afford it. You'll be able to afford to build it, to run it, and that way you can have shows. You can afford to have shows every week for the people, and that's what we want. We don't want to just open it 5 times a year for touring Broadway shows. We want this to be a theater that supports the community groups, supports the touring groups, supports entertainment, so that every weekend there will be something that people can come and see. And that's the vision. And 800 seats turn out to be just about the right size for that.
Okay. So that brings up a question in my mind is, who would use this? So I think you just talked about touring groups and, Broadway, maybe shows that everybody knows, but then also local performances. I don't know, Benny, can you just tell us, like, who is this really for? I mean, obviously it's for the community to go and watch performances, but who would perform there? Who would be, like on a year's time, who would you be able to go and see as examples?
Sure. We actually have 5 partner organizations that are planned to be the resident companies, essentially, of the space, getting like priority scheduling, and so that they can make sure that they have the dates that they need. But we have all the Mid-Columbia arts groups. We have Arts Foundation of the Mid-Columbia, which the plan would be for them to run the gallery. But they also do like a literary conference, and they do all sorts of things. And then Mid-Columbia Ballet, Mid-Columbia Master Singers, Mid-Columbia Musical Theater, and Mid-Columbia Symphony. So those would be the primary local groups that use the space. Although we hope that other groups like the Rude Mechanicals or some of the other great like performing arts groups, we have so many around here, would utilize the space as well. And since we have the 2 spaces planned, the big auditorium and then the smaller community space, we're hoping that it would meet the needs of many different sizes of organizations and many types of performances. And then like Steve was talking about, there are touring groups that have, they do Broadway shows. They've pared them down to fit that size of theater. So we'd be able to pick up some of those that tour around and go to Yakima and Walla Walla and Spokane, and we'd be able to be a stop on some of those tours.
Oh, and that's cool. I mean, like go ahead.
And then we also hope that the lobby space and all of that would be used for people's events and parties and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Performing groups, but also we could have lectures, we could have comedians, we could have jugglers, all this kind of thing. It's intended to serve a wide range of activities.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And on the like the touring groups, someone that goes to say Spokane at the Opera House, which I think is a larger venue, then would that same one come here, or like is there different tiers in like those big touring performances? Is it, I don't really think about it, but how does that work? Would there be, like you said, maybe kind of ones that are going to Walla Walla and Yakima that aren't going to the Tri-Cities now that we could attract?
Yeah, and actually Julie said that she looked into some of the current groups that are touring around that we might be able to attract. So Julie, if you wanted to give some examples, that'd be great.
Well, I've been going to, for example, ones of similar sizes. And yes, they are also ones that come from Spokane, maybe not the big, huge productions, but right. There are occasionally, they will have, well, more than occasionally, have a smaller, they scaled down Broadway shows, for example, to fit this kind of a venue because there's such a market for it. Yeah. So there's things like, especially tribute shows. There's some of the smaller musicals that exist, like Godspell. That's really dating me, but that's the one that came to mind. And
Come From Away.
Come From Away. That would be a great one. Anyway, there's just all kinds of things that would fit into that. We could easily slip into that tour system and take advantage of it. Like I was seeing in the new field hall that's being built in Port Angeles, they're having the Brubeck brothers, Dave Brubeck's sons, a quartet, a jazz quartet. And I thought, oh man, I'd love to have that here.
Yeah,
cool.
If you've ever been to a Broadway show, you realize that the theaters on Broadway aren't that large. Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is that a Broadway theater is about 800 seats. And so a lot of the shows that go around are really designed for that, because there really aren't that many 2,000 seat theaters around that people want. And one of the nice things about where we are in the Tri-Cities, we're between places where shows go. We're between Seattle, Spokane, Boise, other these places. And so we were told by touring groups is that they'd love to be able to stop by on their way to other places, because that way they actually can pick up a different performance, another performance, so that the number of shows we could pick up this way was actually quite large.
Mm-hmm. There's also some potential for like bands and, smaller bands. I mean, we're not going to have Taylor Swift Performing Arts Center, but like I
Sure.
love the band Bright Eyes, and they perform in Spokane, and they go to Seattle, and they performed in Troutdale, and so they're about the right size that something like that could be in our Performing
Yeah.
Arts Center.
Oh, that's cool. That's we work with the Regional Chamber of Commerce has a My Try effort, and one of the things that came out of one of their councils is this event that it's not. I don't think it's officially named yet, but Try the Try, and it would be based on an event that goes on in Boise called Tree Fort, which years ago, you know, I went to it one year, and a group I worked for was one of the sponsors, and it was pretty amazing because it brought in kind of bands that nobody had heard of before. So it's a really cool way to do new music and, you know, more performing venues around, like for the Tri-Cities. That's the thing about it, is doesn't all happen in one space. In Boise, it happens in the downtown. In Tri-Cities would need to come up with a plan to, you know, spread it out. But to have more performing spaces, even for things like that, like you say about bands, I mean, that's the thing about it. Because I think one thing that we hear from our members and businesses, from, you know, huge employers like P&L all the way to the smaller ones, is especially young professionals, when they come to the Tri-Cities, especially if they're not married, you know, there's this perception of like there's nothing to do, right? And so I think that's an opportunity for the Performing Center to bring in all of these different things from outside, and then for inside groups to have some place to perform, and just give local people another place to like go do something and have something that is entertaining and socially, you know, gives you some outlets and stuff. And like that, I think it's great, really.
Yeah.
So,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, that's a good goal, actually. Like, you know, to have something happening every weekend, so people can just be like, you know, we want to go do something. Let's go see what's happening at the Performing Arts Center.
Yeah, but I'd also like to stress is that one of the primary drivers of what we are doing is to provide a home for the artists, the home for the arts here. So there's all these community groups who are partners, the symphony, the master singers, the musical theater. These groups desperately need a place where they can perform, because right now, like for example, the symphony cannot even schedule a season because they're not even allowed to schedule the high schools until right before the school year. And this means they can't bring in outside guest. They can't bring in outside guest artists. They can't recruit musicians. It really negatively impacts them tremendously. And we used to have, for example, there was an opera group here, and that died because there really was no place to do things. And so basically, we found out during the pandemic how critical it was to have a place, a home for the arts, because the only groups that really got through, or the performing arts groups that really got through the pandemic in a reasonable way, were those that had facilities, the Richland Players, Academy of Children's Theater, the ballet. And the other ones, they struggled. And that's one of the things that we did during the pandemic, is try to help them out, because we realized without a home, you're liable to disappear completely.
Well, plus you can't build a following. If you're having to find a different venue for every performance, you have to be a pretty committed audience member to follow them. And that is really a lack here.
Yeah. So
that's a good point. I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that in a sense, we not only want to provide a venue for the entertainment, but provide a foundation to build the community arts. So there's more community arts, there's more opportunities for people to participate in the arts. That's really going to also really positively impact the ability to recruit and retain young people.
Yeah. Well, and I'm even thinking, and I don't want to blow the scope up, but it's just a question on one of the first things you guys said was infrastructure, right? So the infrastructure for the task force was a critical step to be able to move forward. And, you know, as you are able to hit your fundraising goals and then build the facility, and then it is a home for all of these performing groups, would there be some economy of scale that they could share resources or share some of that infrastructure to even lower their overhead costs? I'm just throwing it out because I thinking from running a nonprofit, that's something that's on our minds all the time, is that overhead sometimes is, it just eats into the dollars that you can put into executing in the community. So would that be a possibility, or you think that would be something that could come up?
Penny, why don't you answer that one about infrastructure?
Yeah. Well, I have a good answer. I think that one of the things that we want to make sure we can do is make the space affordable to our partner organizations and to other community organizations, because that is our main focus, providing a home for the arts in Tri-Cities. What we're doing now, actually, we have our studio. It's called the Studio on Simons. It was a Christian broadcast station that had been vacant for a really long time, and we once I came on board, we started looking for a place to have as a home for ourselves, and then we found this space that provides like a conference room and rehearsal space and recording space for our partner organizations and other community groups. And it's been full all the time. It's been a really great asset to the community. We've even had some performing groups that we weren't really familiar with sort of come out of the woodwork and use our space. It's been really wonderful having that, because meeting space and places to plan and to strategize were scarce before the pandemic and then non-existent during. So being able to provide that at an affordable rate or free of cost was extremely important to get our partner groups back up and running. And so we hope and we plan for the Mid-Columbia Performing Arts Center to be the same thing, but on a much larger scale. And part of bringing in those touring groups that we were talking about is to help subsidize the cost to the local groups.
I see. So I didn't bring it up before, but we do have the question and answer feature on. If you're listening to us or watching us on Zoom and you have a question, please put your question in the question and answer feature. If you're watching us on social media, you can put your question in the comment and we'll do our best to get to you. But the question is, as you were doing the design work with the architects and doing the research, did you look at building an outdoor arena, or was that part of the conversation that you guys had?
Go ahead, Penny.
Sorry, just jumping in with all these answers, and Steve can correct me if I'm wrong. But our primary focus is on the indoor facility, because where we intend to locate is actually in Columbia Park West, next to the Reach Museum. They have an outdoor stage. We definitely don't want to compete with them. But our focus is, there's a lot of outdoor things here that, so we didn't feel that was as much of a need as a real dedicated indoor facility, but Steve can probably expand on that.
Yeah, there's a number of different outside facilities that we already have. For example, in Richland, there's a nice outdoor stage, the APO stage they have out there, and and of course the Reach Museum has an outdoor arena too. The problem with outdoors is you don't know what the weather is going to be. So a couple of years ago, the Symphony, who I'm on the board of directors of, we planned a 4th of July concert, and we went out and we hired musicians and we planned, the patriotic music, and it's going to be open to everyone. And then about a week before, the temperatures hit 112 degrees.
Wow.
And you can't play a cello in 110 degrees weather, among other things. Imagine the horn, the horn. And so we had to cancel it, and it cost us thousands of dollars to cancel the thing, because you really can't do it. And so we realized is the fact that if you want to have something that's year-round and predictable, you got to have an indoor arena. That's all. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, we talked about since me and my family are new to the Tri-Cities, places where I come from, and you talk about 4th of July not having good weather, I just assume it rained or something bad happened. I forgot about it being 112 because we're in the Tri-Cities now that has somewhere 300 to 400 days of sunshine, right? That's our weather event in the summertime. That's right. That's a great example. I think Well, so let's maybe shift gears and talk to Julie, because obviously the big question is like, okay, how do we raise the money for this? Uh, Maybe we can start off with like what's the goal, how much money needs to be raised, and then what's the plan, and how can the community get involved? How can we all help with this effort, and what are those next steps?
Oh, great. Well, first, we do not have the most current estimate for the facility because we had one before COVID, but obviously things have gotten more expensive. And so LMN is working with us to come up with a current cost estimate for the facility. But before that, we were looking at like 40 million. And of that, we had a feasibility study done that said our community could at most handle 15 million. And then the remainder would come from grants and foundations and that sort of thing. So
okay.
It became clear to us we had to work toward what's called a public-private partnership. And then, but in terms of the public and the corporations and businesses in this area, they are more than welcome to be part of this. And we will have an extensive list of naming rights for the facility, some of which have already been claimed, not the facility itself, but we have, like, for example, a concert grand Steinway planned in our plans, and a local audiologist, Frank Aiello, committed to that $500,000.
Wow.
So it would be named in memory and honor of his late wife, Beverly. So that was a really nice boost. And we've got many more things that can be named. The box office is taken. Bechtel got that. The Old Foundation has a couple of doors. And handicapped restroom. Big deal.
We have names for the handicapped restroom.
We do have regular fundraising events. We do have, we are always encouraging people to donate, become recurring donors to subsidize and keep our operations going. But if anyone gives us money that they say this is for the facility itself, it is put in a separate account and we don't touch it.
Yeah, there's also a fundraising golf tournament coming up.
Oh, Tracy's getting.
Okay.
Or do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Let's talk about the golf tournament.
Well, this is our second golf tournament. It's called Par for the Arts, and it will be on Friday, May 19th at 1 o'clock at Canyon Lakes.
Mhm.
And we've got quite a few people lined up already, but we can always use more players. And if you want to sponsor, we have sponsorships available at all levels. And it just it's guaranteed to be a good time. And it gets us in front of a group of people that maybe haven't heard of us yet. And that's what we're about, not just in raising funds, but raising partners, advocates, people who can spread the word with us. And so that'll be a lot of fun. And then we have a holiday breakfast, which is a Raise the Paddle event. And that'll be in probably late November. And that provides a lot of our operations money. But we're having a number of other things planned throughout the year. We'll have our first gala next May at the Reach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me go back to the idea about how are we going to pay for this. As Julie said, it's going to be a public-private partnership, and these are the kind of partnerships that have been very successful. Mount Vernon and built McIntyre Hall that way. Beaverton built a performing arts center recently because of that. There's a lot of different examples. And so one of the things we had to do is find a partner. And so we've been working with the Richland Public Facility District to help to be our public partner for this.
Yeah.
And so far they're very supportive. The city of Richland has been very supportive of what we've been doing. So we're really making good progress in not only lining up the private partners, but also the public partners to help us do this. Because in a sense, it's expensive. And so you want to basically tap into all of source of the funds you can to make it happen. And because everyone will contribute to it, everyone in the Tri-Cities as well as the city of Richmond will contribute to it, it will be a performing arts center that is owned and operated by the people of the Tri-Cities. And that's the way it should be. They should feel they own it, they have a stake in it, and it's theirs.
Oh, you bet. Would the public facility district be able to help with the capital campaign, or would it be more of a ongoing, like tax, that they would take some of the tax dollars they get out of the district and then be able to help with operations, or would it be both, or what would that look like?
Well, the fact is that if you look at the financial plan, if you look at other things like at other performing arts centers, like for example, the Edmondson Performing Arts Center, which is a little bit north of Seattle, that's owned by Public Facility District, and the funds they provide would actually to build the facility, not to operate it. The facilities themselves actually bring in a fair amount of cash. I mean, these are things that are make money, okay?
Yeah.
And so they don't need an operational subsidy. This is something which is ongoing. And so the idea is the public is actually to help with the construction costs. Once they construct, once it's built, it should be self-supporting. And certainly our financial analysis and business plan suggests it will be self-supporting.
Yeah. Oh, it's good to know. Is it, just out of curiosity, like on your website, do you guys have the capital campaign or the plan out there that people can go look at, or, to get a better understanding of all the research that you guys have done? Is that something that's out there?
We do have our some information that is about us that shows what we have done so far. We're in the process of updating the business plan.
Okay.
We do have what we had before COVID available, but as far as a capital campaign, that's still in formation.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The thing is that before you can launch a capital campaign, you have to have all your ducks in a row. You have to have your business plan, you have to have your updated facility plan, you have to know where it is, you have to know all the partners, and so all the check boxes are checked. So we're going through, we've checked almost all of them now. And so that's why we're saying that the timing is right and the timing is good, because we're getting very, very, very close to launching the capital campaign to get it built.
I see. Oh, that's good to know. That kind of gives a reference for, what's upcoming, what are you working on now, and then what are those next steps? You talked about maybe at the old $40 million mark, that $25 million would come from foundations and other big donors, but are there foundations that specifically give to arts, facilities like this, or just, and not to let any secrets out, but what kind of foundations are out there that maybe you guys have already had some conversations with that you'd feel confident about, getting a large donation for the capital campaign from?
Well, there's ArtsWA, which is the Washington State Arts Association. They, in combination with the Department of Commerce at the state, they have a building for the arts program, and that is a multi-million-dollar opportunity. You have to have started well on your way to building the facility, though, before you have that. So it's a promise, and we just recently got a grant from the Paul Allen Foundation for about $22,500. Now that doesn't sound like much, but it really will help us with our operating costs. But as we get closer to building, starting breaking ground and things, the opportunities really broaden out. But we keep our eyes open and we apply for everything we can.
Oh, that's great. I would think even in the public-private partnership, maybe there's even some legislative opportunities. I mean, I'm not speaking for our local legislators, but I know that our local legislators did very, very well this legislative session in bringing back one-time, kind of capital improvement budgets for public facilities in the Tri-City. So, I mean, to your point about the specific one from Department of Commerce, there might even be other sides that there could be state help on putting together the capital. Yeah.
that's happened in
great.
places like the Wenatchee Performing Arts Center. The state legislature actually just passed a bill that gave them a chunk of cash years ago to build it.
Yeah.
So like you can do this, but the idea is that, these are last steps.
Yeah.
The first steps is getting all the ducks in a row.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you haven't actually officially launched the capital campaign yet. So once you have the business plan updated, then everything else, then you'll be able to be very specific on who are the people you're going after, the organizations, and how does that work? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. So what, besides going to your website, learning more about the project, writing a check, going to the golf tournament, maybe going to the Raise the Paddle breakfast, what are some other ways that the community could help out? Just in general, and I'm sure there's 1,000 ways, but what would, if somebody's watching or watches later on YouTube and they're really interested in the task force, what can they do to help out?
Any?
Well, we have there are a lot of opportunities to volunteer. And there will be more as we start moving into a capital campaign and just promoting the Performing Arts Center as an idea in general. We're always looking for board members that have skills that they'd like to share and like to, help us out with what we need to do prior to that. So, and all different types of skill sets. It's not just specifically like we need a lawyer on the board or something like that. So we'd love to just hear from people who are interested and maybe find a good fit for them as far as our volunteer needs go.
And they can do that on our website.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That is great. What about just for all the different things that are happening? I mean, I love this concept of, that every weekend or kind of like every night, people could just go like, hey, what's going on at the performing center? But do you have a feel, and you even talked about like the Broadway plays, that these smaller ones would go to Walla Walla and Yakima, or even, ones that are going between Spokane and Portland or something. But how far do you think people would travel? And I know, Finney, you shared that you're from Hermiston. So, I mean, that seems like a no brainer. People come up from Hermiston, but like, do you have a sense, because like when we look at the airport, our catchment area, if you will, for the airport, which I think kind of goes over to retail shopping experiences, is about 1 million people. Do you think that's relatively the size of kind of the audience that you could access that would come here for events at the center, or has that been any part of your discussion or research?
It's part of some of these are the numbers that we're trying to revise from a few years ago, but I think that sounds about accurate. And not only would we bring in people from outside, we bring in some tourism, it would also allow people to stay here. Because right now, I talk to tons of people who just go out to Spokane or to Seattle or Portland to go see a show, and they're spending their money in those places and spending their time in those places. And hopefully we would keep those people here and keep that money in the community. But also, yes, we expect that there would be a pretty broad, like pretty wide, like I guess territory that people would come from, from outside to come see things here instead of traveling to one of the other cities.
Yeah, and Finney being a Visit Tri-Cities board member, I think that was well said as a Visit Tri-City board member, right? So that's a basic goal, is keep people here, keep them spending their dollars here. Well said.
Right. Bring people and keep people.
That's right. That's exactly right. So we did have a question that is around location. So they're wondering, is location fixed? I think you guys talked about Columbia Park West. Next to the Reach, but they're asking, is the location fixed, or would the Vista Field, kind of convention center location be a potential location you look at?
I can answer that one.
Okay.
Remember this, what we found is that we have to have a public-private partnership. And so we've been doing two things: finding the private partners and finding the public partners. And we spent a number of years trying to work with the Kennewick Public Facility District and Port Kennewick and other entities in the Kennewick area, which of course own and operate the convention center and Vista Field, to try to identify a public entity that really would put this at the priority it had to be, that is not 25 years from now.
Sure.
And so what occurred after we, explored the Vista Field thing and, various things I won't go into, it turns out that we just could not identify a public entity in the Kennewick area that would support us. So when we started talking to the Richland Public Facility District and the city of Richland, they were far more supportive. And so we've been working with them for a number of years about their projects, where they're going. And so after a while of exploring all the options and getting some architectural drawings done and some feasibility studies done, we found that actually the Columbia Park West side is actually the ideal position. It's easier to access, there's more parking. The building site is easy to build on, it's relatively inexpensive. We would save millions of dollars in construction costs because of that. So after all this stuff, we realized, the site that really makes the most sense to be centrally located in Tri-Cities, access, visibility, support, is the Columbia Park West side next to the museum. So the eventual vision is to have the reach, maybe expand the reach, maybe have a performing arts center there, maybe have a cultural center there. There's all sorts of things you can build in children's museum. There's all sorts of things you can build in Columbia Park West. And so the idea is to have a center of arts and cultures and museums in one place that everyone can really come to every weekend. Is a very appealing idea for both the economic development thing and the sustainability aspect. So that's why we've decided, well, this is the commitment we've made, is to build it there.
That makes sense. I did want to also talk about Visit Tri-Cities board that Finney's a member of. On Facebook, Rob Roxburgh, who's the former Visit Tri-Cities chair and also a communications manager for Central Plateau Cleanup Company, made a comment. I just wanted to add it. And Rob said, local schools have been gracious to allow performing groups to schedule space. But he said he's been a part of shows that have had to break down and rebuild sets in the middle of a run because another event was booked at the school in between show dates. It's no way to run an efficient community arts community. We need dedicated space to host our vibrant performing groups, which I think is very well said. I wanted to because obviously that's a direct comment about why do we need this? Why can't we just keep on doing what we do? And I mean, that's a great example of, we don't have that space. And I think, Finney, you even mentioned fly space, which in my last job in the Lewis Clark Valley, I learned in a similar, effort to kind of revitalize an old theater, that fly space is the space above the stage where you can fly scenery, backdrops, curtains all the way out of the way, right? So you don't have to break it down like Rob's saying, that there can be this flexibility for performing areas.
Yeah, a lot of touring shows won't go to facilities that don't have fly space because it just makes it all the more difficult to do what they need to do. And I think that was really well said. I really appreciate Rob adding all of that because, the schools have great facilities, but they need them for their students, and that's what they're for.
Yeah, really well said. So we're getting close to the end. What haven't we talked about yet? What else do you guys want to share with us that are important things that we should all know and we should all get behind the Arts Center Task Force and as a community come together to help out with making this happen? Anything?
I would just like to.
I think we touched on a lot, but go ahead, Julie.
I want to encourage people to become our advocates. And tell people about what we're doing and invite them to things that we are hosting, fundraisers or whatever, because we'll be having a lot of open houses at the studio at Simon's. And we hope to bring a lot of people in to know more about what we're doing there.
And I would like to say is the fact that we are a grassroots community organizations. We're building this for the community. And so all the designs, all the plans, are built around engaging the community. To get our original plans built, we engaged dozens and dozens of community groups and tell us what you need, tell us what you want.
Exactly.
And so we're not doing this for us so much as we're doing it for the Tri-Cities community. So if you have ideas, if you want to help, if you have suggestions of what we can do better, how we can make it happen, just let us know. We're here for the community.
Yeah, that's very well said. I mean, this is a obviously a huge effort, but I think really so needed, because I think it's one of those things that it's almost like build it and they will come. People maybe that aren't in the arts community, aren't a member of the groups, or just aren't aware of what the possibilities are. Maybe it's hard for them to see it, but I think that once you guys are successful and this is built, which I have no doubt that it's going to happen because you've got great people working on a great project, I think it'll open people's eyes. And then, then they'll realize, oh yeah, why wouldn't we be helping with this? Because I think until you see it, it's hard to know what you're missing out on. And you've given great examples of, what people can go and take a look at and what it really brings to a community, because it just broadens our community, it broadens our diversity. It's it's a great opportunity for us that we can all get behind.
I agree. And also I want to remind people say, well, you've been at this an awful long time, haven't you? It takes a long time. It really does. It's sort of like, we're on track. We created a schedule, a timeline about 10 years ago, and we're actually pretty close to it. If it wasn't for COVID, we'd be right on our timeline. We got a little delay there, but other than that, this is how long it takes. It takes a long time to build these things. So we're not discouraged at all. We are very encouraged that we continue to make progress every year and get closer and closer to this.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So let's wrap it up. Finney, do you have any closing remarks? And thank you for joining us today. Thanks for your time. Thanks for telling us what's going on with the task force. But any closing remarks for us?
Thank you for having us. It's always great to be able to tell people what we're doing. I think my last thing I want to say is one of the biggest things people can do is to support the arts in Tri-Cities. You can go to our website and find our community arts calendar to see a list of events that are happening in all kinds of arts. Just attend things and get involved and, help these groups make it in the meantime before we get this thing built.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Stephen and Julie, any last remarks that you'd like to leave us with? And thank you both for your time. We really appreciate this. I've learned so much, and hopefully, we can help roll this and get more support for the group, and then ultimately the capital campaign. Everybody in the community get behind you guys.
Yeah, what I would like to end is saying is the fact that you're only seeing the three of us, but the Arts Center Task Force has been a dedicated group of 15, 20, 30, tons of people who've been working with us over the last decade. We're just the representatives of this, but the real work that's gotten us here has been our group of volunteers at Arts Center Task Force. So I want to thank all of them for helping us be able to come here and tell you about how close we are, because it doesn't work without a team.
Yeah. It's a great point. I think so many projects that we all work on the Tri-Cities have been in place or been coming to fruition for a long time. Like when we see the successes, it's always a perfect point you're making, that it comes on the support of everybody that's been a part of the projects and since it first started. So, well, Stephen and Julie, Finney, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really enjoyed the conversation. And like I said, I know I've learned more about the Arts Center Task Force and the opportunity for the Arts Center, which is amazing. Everybody on Zoom, thanks for joining us, and social media. Just want to let everybody know that our next Coffee with Karl will be Friday, May 12th, where we'll welcome our city and port economic development partners celebrating Economic Development Week. And so it'll be a special 90-minute episode celebrating the projects that we're defining the future with and some of the cool things going on. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Thanks Arts Center Task Force leadership group for joining us, and everybody have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.